So today we'll start reading from verse 2.17. But before that, I want to show you something. So let me just share the screen. So I will take few minutes. I see Jayamanor Prabhu joining to show you the practical application of what we are learning and how powerful it is. So if you are following the news in India, you may be seeing that some great personalities are committing suicide. And when I researched, suicide is the number two cause of all the deaths which is happening in the world. Now, I'll show you just by knowing the chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita how one can avoid that. So you see in last class we read these two verses, text 13 and text 14. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due courses are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception. So you see in these two verses, if someone understands that we are the soul, and then this non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, it happens and then it goes also. So like the way we never ask for any anything which happens in good in our life, we never ask, it automatically comes. Similarly, when difficulties comes, we never ask, but it comes. But these two, we need to understand, both of these two are non-permanent and they are compared to the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. So, and then if one understands, then he will not get bewildered or he will not get disturbed. And another thing which is important is that this body which is given to us, it's given for a specific purpose. So we are the soul, right? Currently we are just a temporary proprietor of this body, but this body is not ours. This is given to us by God or nature to serve some purpose. So we have no right to destroy this body or to commit suicide, right? Because something which is not yours, you cannot destroy that. So that's another angle of looking at these things, that why someone should not do a suicide. It's so, and another thing is that now coming to the harmful part, like what happens if someone does suicide, what happens to him in the next. So what happens is, let's say when we take a birth, we are given a definite time span. Okay, this person lives for 70 years or 60 years or 80 years. Now if someone commits suicide before completing that time span, then his soul will not get the body until that period. So let's say if you are given a timestamp of 70 years and someone does a suicide at 35 years, so for next 35 years he will not get a body, because he has gone against the nature and destroyed his own body. It was given to him to serve a higher purpose. Human body is very, very, very rare. It's very, very rare to get the human body. And if someone does a misuse of that, then he has to suffer. So what happens? His soul will not get a body, and he will become like a ghost without body, and he has to suffer for next 35 years. So people think that by committing suicide, their suffering will end, but it's not. The suffering will increase many folds, because you still have the desires, but you cannot fulfill your desires because you do not have the body, because you have yourself ended your body. So just see the how powerful is the Bhagavad Gita, that if just by knowing chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, one can save oneself from this committing this step. Okay, so that I just want to share this information. Jai Manohar Prabhu, I see you joined, so over to you.
Okay, Prabhu. So, was there a question about that, or what?
No, I
Or
just
you are utilizing the time?
I thought of sharing because there's a lot of discussion happening in social media and everywhere about the suicide, right? And then
Uh-huh.
I researched, and it's the number two cause of deaths in the whole world. And then how Bhagavad Gita teaches us and how we can apply the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita in understanding that why someone should not take his own life. So I was just explaining.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. So let's get started with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadkamam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Saigan Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijan Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagan Lalita Shri Vishrakan Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kant Radha Kant Namastute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. So welcome back to our weekly discussion on Bhagavad Gita. We are reading chapter 2. Bhagavad Gita is also called Yoga Shastra, and we'll see how chapter 2, after getting the substantial understanding about the soul, Krishna will talk about the process of yoga, which is the connection of the soul to the super soul.
Prabhuji, can you open your camera?
Oh, it's not open.
Not.
Is it good?
Yeah, now it's open.
Voice is audible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think we discussed till verse 16, which was about those who are seers of the truth, have concluded that for non-existent spiritual, that's why it's eternal, and it does not undergo the changes the body does. And this was the conclusion the seers of the truth or self-realized sages, both personalist and impersonalist, concluded this by studying nature of both. This is what we were discussing, and we were also seeing like how Krishna was instructing Arjuna that not be disturbed by the appearance of winter and summer season, like contact of the senses with the sense object does not get bewildered by that, and tolerate the difficulties. And we also give the understanding of the word tolerance. Tolerance means when difficulties come, or good or bad or tough or nice situations come, one is not bewildered uh, in his focus. The main focus, main aim is not lost. That's what it means to be tolerant. Not lost due to the circumstances of the situation. So now we'll further delve into this chapter, and we'll read the verse 17. If you can share it, Prabhu. Oh, it's already there. Okay. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yen sarvam idam tatam vinasham avyas avayayasyasya na kashchit kartum arhati. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Wow. So this Krishna is, further saying how the eternity aspect of the soul, like it's imperishable. Body is perishable or destructible. So let's read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maybe I'll ask this time, who did not read since last time? Who has not read even once? Praveen, would you like to read? No? Okay. Sridevi Mataji like to read?
Hello,
Yes.
Prabhu.
Yes. Who is
Yeah,
this,
I
Praveen?
can. Yeah, Praveen.
Oh, yeah,
For
please
support.
read. Please read. Yes. Maybe Shridevi Mataji can read next one. Continue. This verse more clearly
Yeah.
explains. Start from there.
This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is a embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in the size. The the Svetasvatara Upanishad 5.9 confirm this. Balagra Sata Bhagyasya Sathada Kalpitasya Cha Bhagyo Jiva Savinyeha Sa Sakanantyaya Kalpate. When the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of such part is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is a measurement of the dimension of the spiritual soul. Similarly, the same version is stated. Keshagra Satabhagyasya Satam Sa Sadrasatmaka Jiva Sukshma Swarupo Yam Sankhyatitho Hi Chitkana. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms, which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spiritual soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is a basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spread throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.9, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is further explained. Eso nur atma setasva vediyatvayo yasmin pranaha panchada samvivesha pranais chittam sarvam uttam prajanam
Potam.
yasmin
Yeah,
yasmin vid
continue.
yasmin vidyuthe
Vishuddhe.
vaibhavate isa atma.
Mhm.
The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the five kinds of air: prana, apana, vyana, samana, and uddhana. Is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of five kinds of material, air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The the Hatha, sorry, the
Hatha yoga.
Hatha Yoga
Yeah.
system is meant for controlling the five kinds of air, encycling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So, the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to Mundaka Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity. And because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the supersoul, and thus all the energies of the bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles which carry the oxygen from the lungs gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called the name Prabha or superior energy. So, whether one follows Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of the spirit soul in the body. And the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the personality of Godhead himself. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thanks to you. So yeah, this is another very powerful purport and very powerful verse. It's the main theme that this verse is talking is the soul cannot be saved. Oh, sorry, soul cannot be killed, and the body cannot be saved from the death. Because Arjuna is worried about his relatives being killed, right? So Krishna is saying that okay, soul cannot be killed, and they are the spirit soul. So Arjuna should not refrain from from this war. And also another side, he's saying that Kauravas cannot escape death. By death here means the change of the body, even if Arjuna does not kill them. Because for the body, if he thinks them to be body cannot be saved. So anyways, they will be dying, but you become the cause of their death and thus liberate them. So can you share, Prabhu, okay, you already are sharing a sense of the purport. So first thing is the essence is like it's describing the nature of the soul. So no one is able to destroy imperishable soul. That's what Krishna is bringing. He's presenting the science of soul in this particular chapter, or Atma. Atma cannot be pervaded by anything. So let's understand it. Whereas Atma can pervade and penetrate everything. Are you getting it? Like Atma, nothing can penetrate or pervade Atma, because Atma is achintya. It's not material. Anything is which is material, it can be pierced or it can be pervaded by something else. Whereas Atma is spiritual, it pervades everything and penetrates everything. It's so subtle, it's so minute that it can enter smallest to smallest kind of body, right? We have the size of the body varying in this universe, like very small body to a very very big body. There is a timi, which is a very very small jantu, like an insect, and there is another thing called timir fish, which is very big. And there is another fish which is called Timingala, which can even take that Timi fish inside its mouth. So the soul is same within the body. So bodies are different, but the soul is same. So soul can pervade any body, but nothing can pervade inside the soul. So soul cannot be divided, or its nature cannot be disturbed. So that's why soul is indestructible. The important point Krishna is bringing. And soul energy is the consciousness. So when you see somebody is conscious, the consciousness is the symptom of the soul, or consciousness is the energy of the soul. Consciousness is which is radiating and pervading the body, uh, like when the body is having you can say effulgence, and it's how to say, it's able to move and all that, that's because of the presence of the soul. As soon as the soul goes out from the body becomes pale, body becomes lusterless, body become motionless. So consciousness and the soul, they are interrelated, because consciousness is the symptom of the soul, and they both cannot be destroyed. They are indestructible. Yen sarvam idam tatam, like scripture mentioned. And then in terms of symptoms of the soul, like I already mentioned, it's the consciousness. And consciousness is spread all over the body. Like all part of my body is conscious. If I prick my hand or finger, I can see the presence of consciousness everywhere. And the part of the body which is not conscious, you don't feel any pain. For example, your, the nails, when it's a dead matter, right? It grows. Or hair, if you cut the hair, you try to do anything with it, nothing will happen. But apart from that, whole body is conscious, and that consciousness is there due to the presence of soul. And another thing to understand is there are two kind of souls within the body. One is the soul, another is super soul. So soul is aware of consciousness or pleasure and pain of the same body within which it is residing. Whereas super soul is aware of pain and pleasure of all the bodies where it is reside, because super soul is present everywhere. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannamistum mata samriti jnanam apohanam cha. And Prabhupada mentioned in the purport two Upanishads he refers, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, where it talks about the size of the soul, like Kesha Agra. You take the Agra means um, the tip of the hair. You divide it into 100 parts, and then you further divide into 100 parts. That is the size of the soul. That is 1 times 10,000 times the tip of the hair. That is the size of the soul. So Gita is not just saying like there is something random object called soul. No, it is explaining you the symptom of the soul. It is explaining you size of the soul. It is explaining you the position of the soul. Then another Upanishad Prabhupada is referring is Mundaka Upanishad in the purport, where it explains the position of the soul. Soul is situated, it's within the heart. And this spiritual atom, soul, or atomic soul, is smaller than the material atom. So like there is electron, and our scientist, Dr. Subu Damodar, they coined the term spiriton. So this is also an atom, spiriton, but it's spiritual atom. And then there is a material atom. But this is smaller than that. And this spark, the spiritual spark, is the basic principle of the material body. But basic principle means if it is there, the body is functional. If this basic principle is removed, then the body is useless. And another thing is this, when we say like soul is the 10,000 times the tip of the hair, it's both literally and metaphorically. We have to understand it. It is indicating how small the soul is. So soul has dimension, but the dimension is inconceivable for us because the tip of hair itself is very small, right? And then you divide 10,000 times. That is the position of the soul. And another thing is, I forgot the principle. I think, yeah, it's Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It tells that you cannot simultaneously measure the position on the size of an atom, right? Atom or electron, I forgot now. Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Like both things you cannot measure at same time. So even for atom that is true, then what about soul, which I said is spiritual energy, which is even smaller than that. And soul is floating in the body, within this body, in the region of heart, with 5 different type of airs. Scriptures further explains that. And these different airs, they bring about different kind of emotions that we are experiencing. Again, scientifically explaining. So these airs are prana, apan, vyan, saman, udan. If somebody is interested in Ayurveda, they can study this. The soul is situated within the heart, right? But it spreads its influence all over the body. And because scientists typically, like the atomic soul, their measurement is beyond their power. So that's why they say there is nothing like soul. Body is made up of chemicals. If you put certain chemicals, they mix, and then the body is functional, the heart is functional, the liver is functional, kidney is functional. But they are not, if they understand it's made up of certain chemicals or certain combination or certain arrangement of pressures or temperatures within the body, why they cannot create a soul? They cannot create the soul within the laboratory. Soul is never created, because soul is never created, right? So what else is there? Influence of the soul all over the body. So yeah, if there is material body without consciousness, it's like a dead body, as I already explained. So it, to understand this, I'll give you an analogy. Like the active principle of medicine, it spreads all over the body. So if you take medicine through oral, right? You take water and then you take the medicine. But the active principle of medicine, it mixes through the blood and it is carried all over the body, and it heals you, it cures you. In the same way, the spirit soul is felt all over the body. Like, and another example you can understand is sun pervades the entire universe, right? Sun is there at one location, but the rays and the fulgence is going everywhere. So it's spreading, it's pervading everywhere. In the same way, the soul is situated at one place, the heart, balanced by the 5 airs, but its consciousness, the effect of its energy of it is spread and felt throughout the body. So consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination. It's like I already explained. And it cannot be revived by any material administration. Consciousness is the energy of the soul, and soul is a spiritual identity. That's the point you have to understand. And atomic soul is admitted in the Vedic scriptures. What about Vedic scriptures? Even Abrahamic religions, they also understand the concept of soul. Christianity, they understand the concept of soul, but does not understand the concept of reincarnation. Buddhism, they talk about reincarnation, but does not understand soul. Anyhow, we'll go to that in the further verses to understand that aspect. But the concept of soul or atma or ruh in Islam, that is always there. But the understanding of the soul is not same in Abrahamic religion and Vedic religion. Vedic religion very detailedly present the nature of the soul. And soul is, like I said, it's a fragmental part of the super soul. So super soul is the source of all the energy, all energetic. Similarly, the small atomic source, spark of the super soul is the soul. It's the energy of the Lord. And in the purport, like we were reading somewhere, it is called Prabha. It's a superior energy. So Lord has superior energy and inferior energy. Soul is a superior energy of the Lord, but it is situated marginally. It is superior, but because it is small, it can be influenced by the material nature and it becomes polluted. So yeah, we studied this analogy, Hatha Yoga and purification of soul. Yeah, basically these days people are very much fascinated by the yoga, and Hatha Yoga is one such process where they are controlling these 5 kind of life airs. to control the emotions and to control over the mind, and then to keep the body. Mostly the focus is not even the mind, but to keep the body healthy. Some aspect of mind control also is there, but the original Hatha Yoga is not for any material purpose, but it's for liberating the soul from the material atmosphere. The right now in the material atmosphere, soul is like captured, it's imprisoned within the body, and it's affected by the material changes which are happening within the body, that is affecting the consciousness of the soul. The soul in different bodies experiencing different consciousness, different emotions, different feelings. But the purpose of Hatha Yoga is like to take soul out of this material conditioning, and they practice various sitting postures. I'm not very much aware of the details of the Hatha Yoga, but somebody can study that. But the essence of Hatha Yoga is basically to liberate the soul, which is suffering here in the material world. So with that, let's go to verse 18. Sanskrit, please. अंतवंत इमे देहा नित्ययोक्ता शरीरिणा अनाशीनो परमेश यस्य तस्माद् युध्यस्व भारत. Translation: the material body of indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharata. So Shridevi Mataji, would you like to read the purport?
Purport. The material body is perishable by nature. It may perish immediately or it may do so after 100 years. It is question of time only. There is no chance of maintaining it indefinitely. But the spirit soul is so minute that it cannot even be seen by an enemy, to say nothing of being killed. As mentioned in the previous verse, it is so small that no one can have any idea how to measure its dimension. So from both viewpoints, there is no cause of lamentation. But because the living entity as he is cannot be killed, nor can the material body be saved for any length of time or permanently protected. A minute particle of the whole spirit acquires this material body according to his work, and therefore observance of religious principles should be utilized. In the Vedanta Sutras, the living entity is qualified as light because he is part and parcel of the supreme light. As sunlight maintains the entire universe, so the light of the soul maintains this material body. As soon as the spirit soul is out of this material body, the body begins to decompose. Therefore, it is the spirit soul which maintains this body. The body itself is unimportant. Arjuna was advised to fight and not sacrifice the cause of religion for material, bodily considerations.
The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharata. So Krishna is telling the material, every material body comes with the expiry date. Like you buy some product, there is expiry date, right? So in the same way, this body also has expiry date. Only thing is we are not aware of that expiry date. But the soul, he's saying, within the body is indestructible, immeasurable, like we were seeing in the previous verse, how it's smaller, like Anora Mahima, like it's smaller than the smallest, right? And the size of the soul and all that. And it's indestructible because it's spiritual and it's eternal living entity. Whereas the body has an expiry date. So the basic of acquiring the material bodies, one acquire body according to one work. Can you share the purport? Yeah. So yeah, we were saying the body is perishable and perish at any times. And what the basis of acquiring the material body is according to one work. So depending upon your actions or the work and the thought process you have at the time of the death, one get different kind of body. So religious principles should be used to elevate, because one requires the body according to one work. So if we use the body for the religiosity, for performing the dharma, then one can save oneself from the degradation. One should save the degradation of the soul. Because the degradation of the soul is, first thing is then the soul has to change the body, that itself is a degradation. And then going to the lower species of the life, that is the degradation. So one should observe the religious principle with this body and get out of this cycle of birth and death. And second aspect, Krishna is saying that soul is indestructible and immeasurable. It's indestructible because it's too small to be seen by enemy. What to speak of being killed? Like something is very small, which you cannot even know, which is detect. How you can kill that thing? Someone who is invisible, you cannot kill them. Where will you attack? Where will you fire the weapons? And your weapons are also bigger in size, as Krishna will explain. Like Arjuna's your weapon, even the celestial weapon cannot kill the soul. They cannot dry the soul, right? They cannot penetrate the soul. It's too small. And also it's immeasurable. That's also because it's too small. Though the size is given, but it's aparameyasya. That's the word we were saying in the last word. Aparameyasya means immeasurable. And it is not immeasurable, not just because of its size, but also because of its spiritual nature. It has a spiritual, soul has a spiritual dimensions and not the material dimension. So even if the Arjuna were to shoot thousands of arrows, cannot kill the soul. And then how Arjuna can overcome his lamentation and material compassion? Well, because Arjuna lamentation is for the bodies and the living entity cannot be killed and is different from the body. So if the living entity cannot be killed and also body cannot be saved, and if he understand that the body which he is trying to save cannot be saved and the living entity which he is actually relating to cannot be killed, then where is the lamentation, right? If he understand that Bhishma and Drona as a spirit soul and not Bhishma and Drona as the body, as the material body. So spirit soul is important, not the body. Because as soon as spirit soul is out, you don't like to see the body. Same body which you love so much, same person which you like so much, which is lovable to you. Sorry for that. Which is lovable object to you. You don't want to see that person when the person is dead. The same person you cannot live without seeing, for a second. You cannot tolerate that person for a longer time when the person, when the soul leaves out of the body. So that is the beauty of the soul. And living entity is called like the light because it's part and parcel of the supreme light. So light has two purposes, right? One thing is it removes the darkness or it removes the ignorance, and another thing is it provides the energy, light energy, right? So because of the sunlight, the plants grow, right? The photosynthesis process and all that happens. That's why because of the small light soul, the body functions, the different organs within the body, they grow or they are pushed. This portion they are maintained. So Arjuna is advised to fight and not considering oneself on the spiritual platform. Arjuna should fight because Krishna wants him to do that. He should fight on the instruction and the order of the Krishna and not avoid the fight based on the bodily consideration. Based on the bodily consideration, Arjuna gave the 5 reasons. So he should forget those and on the spiritual platform, considering it as the order of the Krishna, who is the supreme authority, Arjuna should take up the weapon and make Bhishma and Drona change their body so that they can get the fresh body. Let's, with that, go to the next verse, 2.19. य एनं वेति हन्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभोतो न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते. Translation. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain, is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. Purport. Lakshmi Mataji, like to read?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he thinks who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self says not, nor is slain. Purport. When an embodied living entity is hurt by fatal weapons, it is to be known that the living entity within the body is not killed. The spirit soul is so small that it is impossible to kill him by any material weapon, as will be evident from subsequent verses. Nor is the living entity killable because of his spiritual constitution. What is killed or what is supposed to be killed is the body only. This, however, does not at all encourage killing of the body. The Vedic injunction is Mahim Satshat Sarva Bhutani, never commit violence to anyone. Nor does understanding that the living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. Killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state as well as by the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, very nice. So again, powerful verse. Basically, Krishna is reiterating the same point, body and soul from different angles. So if you can bring Prabhu slide 41. So Krishna is here saying the soul can neither be killed or it can be killed. He's saying neither he who thinks the living entity to be slayer, nor he who think it is slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is the slain. What a beautiful verse Krishna is speaking. Like both of them are not in knowledge. One who thinks living entity to be like living entity can kill somebody, that person is not in knowledge. First thing. And also the second person who thinks that living entity can be killed by somebody, he is also not in knowledge. So there is like to killing somebody, that is also not in knowledge, and not to be killed by somebody. So these are two different from different angle Krishna is saying. Why? Because self slays not. Self here means the spirit soul, and nor is it slain. Neither it slays somebody nor it is slain. So it's the same point Krishna is repeating here. And then further, uh, so like we were seeing in the previous verse, Krishna is not just giving the information about the disease, which is important, but he's also telling what we should do to take care of the disease, right? He's not just saying, okay, he's just not giving the theoretical knowledge, but he's also telling Arjuna the practical solution, what he has to do in his present situation. So body is sure to die on its own course, as we know. Either you are young, youth, old. But in that sense, soul is not the killer, right? Because body will die on its own course. Even if you don't kill it, it will still die. So soul is not the cause of the death of the body. And one cannot avoid diversion of one duty also. Like here for the Arjuna, who is a Kshatriya. For Kshatriya, killing to protect the dharma is their duty. They are allowed, they are authorized to kill, but only to protect the dharma. So if a soldier is authorized by higher authority, he can you can say he can kill as many people. He will not be punished. Rather, he will be awarded depending upon how glorious act he performed. The award can vary, like Veer Chakra to Paramveer Chakra to Mahavir Chakra, like that. It depends upon how much chivalry he has performed. But the same soldier, when he is not acted by the authority, when he is not, you can say, having the sanction of the authority, and just on his own haphazardly or whimsically kills anybody, he is liable to punishment for that. So that's very important point here. In the purport we were reading here, like killing, scriptures in general says one should not kill. Mam himsat, right? One should not perform the himsa. Himsa means killing. But violence sometime is needed, and violence is needed, but violence has to be authorized by the higher authorities. So here Krishna has authorized the killing of all this people on the both sides. That's why Arjuna has to take up the weapon, not whimsically, not because of his own, not because of his own pleasure that he wants to gain the kingdom, not for his own sense pleasure, but for the satisfaction of the Lord. Yeah. So, like, since soul is not killed, that does not mean you can go on, killing. Like, soul is immortal, so I can, I did not kill that person because, I did not kill the soul. I just destroyed the body. No, one has to understand that first, like I said, authority aspect is there, and second thing is, uh, uh, do you have the right to take anybody's life? Can you give life to anybody? If you cannot give life to anybody, what right you have to take the life of anybody? So we cannot do that until unless it's sanctioned. Again, this two different aspects based on immortality of the soul, and also like uh, the bodily conception. Both, whichever you take, it's not. It's how to say. It's not encourage killing in any ways. Whatever concept you take, bodily or spiritual, because spiritually you cannot kill the soul, and bodily you cannot you have no right, because you cannot give life to anybody. Like sometimes people justify killing of animals like it's for their own tongues, but I say, like, can you give life to an animal? If you cannot give life, what right you have to take the life of anybody? So practical application is that animal slaughter or animal killing is not at all recommended in the Vedic scriptures. So killing of the body without authority is abominable, it's punishable. So that's why old time when uh, these Kshatriyas, they used to take education from their spiritual master. The spiritual master will not give the divine weapons to anybody and everybody. He will check the qualification of the person, whether the person has a sense control, what kind of character that person is having, what kind of training in morality that person has before giving them that particular weapon. Like Agastya Muni was waiting to give these divine weapons. He could have, and also Vishwamitra, sorry, he could have himself killed the Maricha and Subhahu, who were disturbing his yagya. From this yagya, he wanted to have the celestial weapons to further protect the dharma. But he, even without those weapons, he was capable of killing these demons, but he did not. There were many reasons. One of the reasons was in that very sacrifice, it was not advisable for him to become angry, because if become angry, then the yagya will be spoiled. And another thing, the purpose of getting those divine weapons will be spoiled. But when he get these divine weapons, he asks Ram and Lakshman to protect him. Then when he is presenting these weapons to Ram and Lakshman, Vishwamitra is saying, like, I was waiting for long time, for ages, for a rightful person to whom I can deliver these weapons. Because if these weapons of mass destruction, they come under the hand of unqualified or unscrupulous man, then it can create havoc. Like Ashwathama, he got the knowledge about throwing the Brahmastra, but he was not knowing how to retract it. That's why when he throw the how to say Brahmastra, Krishna asked Arjuna to throw his Brahmastra basically to take back his astra. Otherwise, it would have destroyed all the Brahmand or all the universe. So one has the qualification is very much important before one get the authority of a particular, performing particular duty. So more is your authority, bigger is your responsibility. If you are irresponsible, you cannot be given the authority. So higher post, higher responsibilities. So one has to be responsible in order to aspire for something, bigger. Sometimes people aspire for something bigger without qualifying for that. So what justifies Arjuna killing, as I already said, his justification is the dharma. And what is dharma? Dharma is the word of the God. Here God directly wants him to kill. He's not doing it whimsically due to his own fancies. As I explained, the example of the soldier. Like soldier on its own, when he kills somebody, he's punishable. But when he's killed by authority, he get rewarded. So that's pretty much the summary of this verse 19. So let's go to the next verse, 20. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूय अजो नित्यं शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. For translation, for the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Wow, this further Krishna is explaining the transcendental characteristics of the soul. Let's read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So, who would like to read? Anupama Mataji, like to read?
Sure.
Okay.
Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death. And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc., of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old, as the body does. The so called old man, therefore, feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproduct either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls, and owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. In Katha Upanishad 1-18, we also find a similar passage which reads, Na jayate mriyate va vipachin nayam kutaschin na bhabhuva kaschit ajo nitya sasvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sarire. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in Bhagavad Gita. But here in this verse, there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge, or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart, where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky, owing to the clouds, or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is therefore daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. There are 2 kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu Atma, and the super soul, Vibhu Atma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishad 1-20 in this way. Anor Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan Atmasya janator nihito guhayam. Tam akratuhu pasyati vitasoko. Dhatu prasadan mahimanam atmanah. Both the super soul, Paramatma, and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentations can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So again, one of the beautiful purport. So further delineating the eternality of the soul. This verse is quoting further scriptures, right? Katha Upanishads, supporting the opinion of the Krishna. And then further, if you read the purport again, for the soul there is neither birth, sorry, not purport, the translation. For the soul there is neither birth nor death. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existent, and primeval. So let's go soul as steady versus body as temporary. Yeah. So soul is steady in a sense that it's eternal, it's not changing. And body is unsteady, it's changing. I'll not go in detail about the 6 changes. We already discussed that in past, like birth, growth, sustenance, byproducts, dwindling, and death. Those happens to body, but not to the soul. Utastha, the word is used for steadiness, which implies soul does not undergo these 6 changes. That's why it's steady, it's not changing. All the things that apply to body does not apply to soul. So these changes apply to body, but they does not apply to soul, because soul is aja. Ja means jayate, which takes birth. Aja means that which does not take birth. So refers to soul. So it's not that something which takes birth, it has a particular time, right? When it is born, when it comes into being. But soul is never born, so there is no time when it is created or when it comes into existence. That's why soul is beyond the time, or it's transcendental, or spiritual world, which that's why is also beyond the time, because there is no concept of creation there. It's ever existing. So soul metaphorically means the seed of consciousness or being. I, like we say, I put all my soul, my heart and soul into this, right? I did all my best. I put my heart and soul into it. So metaphorically, it means that you're putting all your energy or all your consciousness into a particular action. So then you're referring, metaphorically, you're referring to the soul only. But we are different from material world. And in material world, if you look from microscopic level, even the matter is always changing. Matter is flux. Flux means flowing or changing. There is a change, but there is an illusion of continuity because of persistence of the vision. Example, person is turning the light, right? Turn on the light and light appears as a circle. So if you see microscopic level, what is happening? You're turning the you're switching on the bulb, electrons are flowing, right? And then the spark is produced, and the bulb gives the light, and this light will spread out, right? From a bulb it will spread out in circles. So, and it looks as if it is conscious, as if it is continuous. The light looks continuous, but if you see within that, the electrons are flowing, it's changing, but outside it appears as if stable or steady. In the same way, the source of there is a source of consciousness which is continuous. Like continuous energy is there. Material manifestation of consciousness are changing of the thoughts. So soul as a consciousness is, soul is steady, but the consciousness energy of the soul, it's changing because your moods are changing, your thoughts are changing. As the same way as the light coming out from the light source is steady, but within the light source there is a change happening, there is a flow of electrons happening, right? In the same way the flow of mood is happening, but the soul or the source of that thing is steady. So Abrahamic religion generally talks of soul, understand soul by negation. They try to understand the affirm, spiritually affirming it by negating it. How? They talk of soul as something which is non-material. That's right. So non-material is like negation. It's not material. By that you are affirming something what is not material or what is spiritual. But the detail of the positive aspect, it is there what is not soul. But what is soul? That those details are not there. So soul, previously they accepted the, like I was saying, Christianity accept the soul, but they does not accept the concept of reincarnation. Because previously, the like Christianity, we know there are various how to say, there are various upgrades or there are various New Testaments and all that. They keeps coming. Previous philosopher, they were not philosopher. The followers of Christianity, they were of belief that that the process of transmigration or reincarnation is true. But the problem for them accepting to that is, for reincarnation to be true, uh, you need to have something is pre-existing and something which exists after life. So, but in Christianity, there is no concept of pre-existence. Everything started from Jesus Christ time, that era. The time also starts from there. So there is no pre-existing. Before 2000 years, there was nothing according to Christianity. But that's not true. But to understand the reincarnation, you have to understand not only the present stage and that you will exist in the future, but also that you are existing in the past. Like Krishna was telling to Arjuna, like these kings, you, myself, we were there in the past, we are existing now, and will continue to exist in the future also. So you have to understand the concept of pre-existence, which is not very much accepted in Christianity. So that's why it says it accepts the soul without fully accepting the reincarnation. They accept reincarnation, but to an extent, but not 100%, or not how Vedic scripture they understand the concept of reincarnation. Even in the Buddhism, there is a concept of reincarnation. So Bhagavad Gita treats soul as uh, like a ontological ontological means pertaining to the nature of existence or reality. It does not consider the soul as just an entity. It describes the soul as higher dimensional entity. It is not a hazy conception, as you will see, like higher dimensional entity. It is an actual object. So using the soul, like when we use sometimes soul is metaphorical sense, that's not wrong also. Sometimes you say, I put your, like I was giving the example, put my heart and soul. So it's not wrong. It's not that you are actually putting your soul there, right? You're taking your soul out and putting there. No. But metaphorically, it means you're putting all your energy, you're putting all your consciousness, you're putting all your vital source into doing a particular kind of action. So, soul, the heart, is source of emotions. Like emotions, they comes from heart, not just the biological heart, but metaphorical heart, where emotions are happening, where thought process is happening because of the presence of the soul, because of the presence of consciousness due to soul. The soul is the seat of the consciousness in metaphorical sense. And what else is there? Yeah, this we discuss also, perception of soul by consciousness. So if you see something is conscious, you can understand that it's living thing. This means it has a presence of soul is there. So sun may be covered by clouds, But you understand that the sun is present, you can understand by the ray of the light. If in the morning, you know it's the morning time and you see the light is there, but sun is not visible, it's covered by the clouds, you can understand the presence of the sun from the light. In the same way, you can understand the presence of the soul that you cannot see with your eyes, but you can understand its presence through the symptom of the consciousness. Consciousness through the movement, through the growth, through, you can understand that soul is present in the body. And then in the purport, it was mentioned there are two kind of souls. Katha Upanishad mentioned one is Anu soul, which is small, another is Vibhu soul, which is infinitesimal, which is infinite, which is very big. Anur, Aniyam, who is that? I forgot the verse. But anyhow, one is very small and one is very big. These are two souls. And what is the difference between the consciousness of two souls? Supreme soul knows past, present, and future of all the souls, as I said, whereas individual soul knows only of the current soul, and also it's prone to forgetfulness. Like Arjuna forgot what he was there, that he existed, like when Krishna is saying he existing in the past. Whereas Krishna remembers everything, or super soul remembers everything, whereas we living entity, we forgets everything. Because if you don't forget, and if you remember what you were in the past, if you have some bad experience in the past, it is difficult to live in the present, right? So that's why Krishna gives you this forgetfulness, so that you can live the present. But to some specific case, some particular cases, they can still remember their past. We have many such examples of where people remember their past life, like of the reincarnation, as we are discussing this particular concept here. And those things are published in the newspaper, in the books, how the children could remember exactly. He's take me to that very village, there is my wife, he's giving the name, and then people go there and they find out there is a lady living with such name in that particular village, and then he's giving the describing all, all other finer details, which only those persons who are intimately related to him can understand. So this is not a Hague concept of reincarnation. It's happening. There are experiences of that. There are many times people getting operated, like when they are lying on the deathbed, and they see as if they are gone out of the body, and they are watching how they are getting operated with different instruments, and then they narrate this thing, that this is what was happening. You're opening my heart. You're changing this and all that experience. So it does happen. The soul can sometimes temporarily go out of the body and come back again. It happens for moment. These experiences are there. People are experiencing it. Forget about all the people. You can say, okay, it may be exception, but for us, everybody of us is experiencing reincarnation. Like when I was child, I had a different body. Now I have a different body. It's changing. My emotions are changing, right? My cells are changing. My thought process is changing. So I can see the reincarnation happening within the same body, but I, as a person, I am still same person. So from that also you can understand the concept of reincarnation. And then Krishna, and a relationship between Krishna and Arjuna is also we saw within the purport. Like how Arjuna is a forgetful soul who will be enlightened by the supreme soul, Krishna, who is the supreme master, supreme personality of Godhead. So relationship between them is that of a master and that of a servant. That will be enlivened, where this forgetful soul will be enlightened and revived of his original consciousness. And at the end, Prabhupada referred to the Katha Upanishad, telling about how one can understand, or who can understand, the glories of the soul. So only one person who is free from material desires and lamentations can understand the glories of the soul, only if Lord wants him to understand, only if he has a grace of the God. If he has a grace of the God, he can understand that. Otherwise, it's not possible. And this similar verse about is also found in Katha Upanishad, Prabhupada referring, where the word used is, let's look at that verse, like this same verse, na jayate mriyate va, instead of kadachin, it says vipaschin. And vipaschin means learned or with knowledge. I'll read that again, the meaning. The meaning and purport of this verse is same in Bhagavad Gita, but here in this verse there is one special word, vipaschin, which means learned or with knowledge. So one who is learned or with the knowledge can understand that soul na jayate, does not take birth, na mriyate, does not die. That's what it is explaining. Ajo nityam, it's eternally never takes birth. Ajo means never takes birth. Shashvato, it's eternal. Nitya also means eternal. Yam Purana, it's oldest, right? Na hanyate hanya mane. Hanyate means we killed. Hanya mane means when the sharir or the body is killed. Hanya mane sharire, when the sharir or the body is killed, the soul is not killed. So this is a similar verse. The soul is always full of knowledge, is full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of soul. So these are some of the key points from this verse, and I think now we should end maybe. I thought of covering 22 words, but looks like I am really slow in progressing. We'll add that 20 verse only, and we'll take any questions you may have. I'm sure you may have a lot of questions, or at least some questions.
Can you explain the starting prayer?
Sorry, what did you say, Mataji?
Can you explain the starting prayer? Every time we say that, right? Can you explain that one?
Which starting phrase?
Prayer, the one we do in the starting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we pray Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. So those prayers are to the spiritual master. So we are praying to remove Ajnana. And which kind of Ajnan? What kind of ignorance? Not just the small ignorance. Timirandasya. It's the Timir is a word, superlative sense it is used. It's the greatest darkness. To get out of that, Jnananjana. Anjana means the ointment. Jnana means the knowledge. Uh, and by Shalakya is a surgical instrument. So spiritual master with the surgical instrument provides the ointment of the knowledge. Chakshur ulmilitam yena tasmai shri guruve nama. So he is giving the chakshur means the eyes through which we can we can receive the knowledge. Tasmai means to that guruva or to that spiritual master. Nama means I offer my obeisances. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam. So he is very dearest to the Chaitanya. Sthapitam yena on this spiritual world. What was desirous to Chaitanya, heart, Manobhishtam means Manokamna or the internal desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They are establishing that in this Bhutala, in this material world. Swayam Rupa Kadamayam. Who are those persons who are establishing the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? They are Rupa Goswami. So these prayers go like that. They are basically glorifying the spiritual master. So therefore, it says Vandeham Shri Guru. You can go through these verses, and there is translation also available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there more question?
Oh, there are some questions which I sent you.
Okay. Can you maybe display that on screen if possible, or I read from mobile?
No, I think just read.
Okay. So I'll read the first question. It says the questions are from Anupama Mangla Mataji, who is also sister of Ashoka Krishna Prabhu. And she has asked a lot of questions. Not sure if we'll be able to discuss them all, but at least few will take today, and remaining will take next week. So we'll take the first question, which says luck versus hard work. Sometimes, no matter how much effort you put, one is not able to accomplish her goals, and then he is told that maybe it's your bad luck. For example, a student working very hard but not able to make his career per his choice. An employee working very hard at job but not able to get a well-deserving promotion because of corporate politics. Even though these may be considered as material things and may not matter on a spiritual plane, but since we live in today's material world, these things do affect an individual emotionally and for some might be seen as a failure. What are some ways to look at it differently? Very good question. Luck versus hard work, right? It's not that always you work hard, you will surely get the result. There is no surety in this world. There is no sure shot formula that you put this much amount of effort, you read that many amount of books, and then you will definitely get the 100% marks, or you will be the number one student. Because there are many factors in the success of a particular action. So one has to understand that. That is the first things. So let's look at those factors, and then we'll see what are the some ways to look at it differently, as you mentioned. So first thing is, for any action, I think we mentioned that in past also, but I'll repeat it here a little faster. For any action, there are 5 things. Ingredients are there. First, action has to be performed, and then a doer has to be there. Karta has to be there, and then karma has to be there. So karta is one who is doer. He's doer in a sense, he's proposing or he's desiring for particular action to be performed. And then there is action, a particular work that has to be performed. And then there is place of work, where the action will be performed, field of action, right? And then there is time of action, which time or circumstance that particular action has to be performed. And finally, there is super soul, who is sanctioning authority for that action to be uh, whether produce the desirous result or not. That's why Krishna says, Karmanye vadhi karaste ma phaleshu kadeshana. Like, oh Arjuna, you have right over your duty, but ma phaleshu on the result you don't have, never you have. But in second line, he says that does not mean that if you don't have result right over a duty, you does not perform the action, right? So it does not mean ma to sangasto akarmani. So you should not be inclined to akarma, like not to work, because that you don't get the results or results are in my hand. So in a nutshell, performing action is in our hand, but the result of action is not in our hand. So when something is not in my hand, why I have to worry about that, right? So one has to work in this understanding that I am not the only one cause of the action. There are 4 other factors. So for an action to be successful, it's not my endeavor alone. There is 4 other factors, like was the time good when I did that action? Was the place where I did that action, was that place was appropriate? Whether the circumstances were favorable for me to get that desirous results? So you have to look for these factors also, and then you have to also see what kind of action it is. And another most important thing is whether um, man proposes but God disposes. I can propose anything, but Krishna is the one who will dispose, who will give the desirous results. So these 5 factors, if you understand, then you can reduce the frustration in your work. And also you have to understand that your jurisdiction lies only in working dutifully, diligently, forgetting about what results you will get. But definitely, then you can ask this question, like how I can work without desiring anything. Yes, you have to desire, but you can desire. Nobody is stopping you to desire, because without desire you cannot work. But you have to understand that the result or the outcome of the desire is not in your hand. Krishna is the provider of those results. And there is another aspect she is asking is that, okay, she understands this does not matter on the spiritual plane, but it does matter on the material plane. Yes, it will affect us materially. That's why one has to gain, if one wants not to be affected by the frustration or the failure of our action, and we don't get the desired results, then we have to dissociate, or we have to situate ourselves on the spiritual platform. If we don't situate ourselves on the spiritual platform, then these uh, good or bad, they will always affect. Like Krishna was saying, matra sparshashtu konteya shitoshna sukha dukkha. So this sukha and dukkha will be experienced as long as you consider yourself to be matra, or this body. As long as you consider yourself this body, so this pain and pleasure of this body will be felt by you. So one has to disassociate oneself from bodily conception of life to spiritual concept of life, and then tolerate these dualities of happiness and distress, gain or loss, victory or defeat. So if one situated in that aspect, then one will not be affected by the failure, because one understand that I tried my best, and to try was in my hand, and I did it my best. Now the luck or the sanction of the authority is not in my hand, it's in the hand of somebody else, and I have no control over that. If I have no control over that, why I should worry? If you cannot control like if you have no control anything, why you should be worried about that? For example, something is happening in remote part and you cannot do anything, then what, just by being worrying or thinking yourself culprit of that particular action, will that help that particular thing to be stopped? Like somewhere there is a big fire and you are worrying, or somewhere considering that some time back I was there, I put something over some inflammable object over there, and the fire broke. Maybe that was one of the reason, but there can be other reason also to aggravating that aspect. So one has to understand the action in its entirety, in completeness, not just look at limited vision with only you being the doer. So that's why you are the controller, and that's why you are the enjoyer. No, first thing, we are not the enjoyer, we are not the doer. We are doer just in a sense that we are proposing. Who is the doer? Material nature is doing through the three modes, through these five senses. Material nature has provided these sense objects through which we are performing the actions. This hand, legs, eyes is provided by the material nature. Karmana Deva Netrin, and it's happening under the Deva or the Supreme Lord. So if Supreme Lord is also doer in a sense because he is sanctioner, right? You are doer in a sense, you are proposing. Material nature is a doer, it's providing the instrument for the action, right? And also the objects for which you are providing this action. And also the three modes are created by material nature. So they are doer in a sense by providing this, and Supreme Lord is doer because he's sanctioning authority. So who is actually the doer? Actually, all three are the doer. So if all three are the doer, all three means the soul, super soul, soul, super soul, and the material nature. So it cannot be. So the result cannot be based on the action of just one particular entity. It has to be considered from all angles. Does that answer to an extent, or you want me to add more? Hare Krishna. Mataji, did I answer your question to an extent?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Just,
Thank
Prabhu,
So,
in this one, can you clarify what is luck? Is it luck is basically your prarabdh, prarabdh meaning your what you are destined to get?
okay. Luck, you can understand like this. There is a prarabdha, like you mentioned the word prarabdha. Prarabdha means in the past you have done something good, pious activities. So because of which you are provided with resources or facilities or particular qualities, qualifications in this life. So luck is it's based on prarabdha, what you have done in the past, but also what you are doing now. Because for what you are doing now, you are creating future prarabdha, right? Because some results you get right away, and some results they take time to fructify. Someday you get after a long time, and some you don't get even in this lifetime, you get in the next lifetime. So yeah, so luck is there, but again you have to understand. Finally, to be lucky or unlucky, depending upon the sanctioning authority. Even if you may have previously something good, you may have capability or quality, you may have gained something good, but if you misuse your present independence, then it's up to the Supreme Lord whether he will still favor you or not. You may have, because of the prarabdha, good qualification or more resources, but still how you use or misuse those facilities, Krishna can, Krishna may allow that action to be happen or may not allow that to be happen. So he may allow you to be lucky or may not allow you to be lucky. You may be very skillful thief, but it's not. Sometimes Krishna is allowing that thing to happen. They are able to do it, but it's not that he will always allow it. So when he's not allowing it, then you're caught. So prarabdha helps, but ultimately it's the grace of the Lord. If you have grace of the Lord, even if you may not have prarabdha, your prarabdha can be changed. It's changing every day. When we are clapping, Prabhupada says, in the kirtan, our prarabdha is getting changed. Our destiny is getting changed. So we on our own cannot change, but by taking to the process of bhakti or spiritual life, we can change the luck. We can change the destiny. Is it okay, Prabhu?
Yes, yes.
Okay. We'll take maybe the next also, and then we'll take the next three questions next time. Mahamantra chanting related. If I listen to the mantra chanting audio, say on YouTube, and chant while walking or cooking, is it okay to do that? Yes, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, actually, the what to say, Mahamantra you can chant in any situation, in any position. Either you're cooking, you're walking, you're sleeping, you're doing anything, you're driving, you can chant. But when you are, say, when you have vowed that you will chant certain number of rounds, like 4 rounds or 2 rounds or 16 rounds, then those chanting you have to perform attentively. Chanting in any way you perform, in any consciousness, it's always been beneficial. Either you do nama aprad, or you do chanting in nama bhas, or you do pure chanting. It's always beneficial, but the benefit is more when you do pure chanting. And for chanting to be pure, there are 10 offenses mentioned in the Padma Purana. So you have to careful to avoid those 10 offenses, and one of the offenses is to be inattentive while chanting. So when you are cooking, like you focus more on the cooking, or you are cleaning, your focus is there on the cooking and cleaning also. So you cannot be 100% attentive. So that way, due to inattentiveness, that's not a pure chanting, but still it is chanting. Like somebody is saying haram, he is still chanting. Ram word is also there. So, but there is no offense. There is no, you're not getting any, how to say, you're still getting the benefit. It's not that by while cooking you chant, you get some, you do some sinful activity. No, it's still beneficial. Either you listen or you yourself chant. Is that okay? Or more explanation needed, Mataji?
No, that's clear.
Okay. All right. So I think it's close to 5:30, or it's 5:30 now. So we'll end our talk here. She has 3 more questions, and we'll take them next week. But before I end, I always keep forgetting there are other devotees here, who can also add to these questions. So I will ask maybe Yamuna Jivan Prabhuji if he likes to add something, or Kadma Priya Prabhu or Ashoka Krishna Prabhu, to any of these explanations. Or any comments or any corrections on these questions or in class in general.
Now on chanting, I will just add that, as you already said, that one should first take a prescribed number of chanting, some vow, like which we called in here, like when we do a yajna, we take sankalp. So similarly, chanting process is also like a yajna. It's a sankirtan yajna. So let's say if someone has taken vow that do 2 rounds of chanting every day of Mahamantra Japa. So those 2 rounds you should do exclusively without any other activity. Like you should do attentively, meaning when you are doing those 2 rounds, no other activity. But after you are done, then you can do other rounds along with other activities. So that's only thing.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else like to add?
Prabhu, I have few questions, so I'll keep my questions for next week. But in today's class, I really like the way how you explained the existence of soul, how it is not perished by the law of conservation of energy. That was really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita Granth ki jai. Krishna Supreme Personality of Godhead ji ki jai. Hare Krishna.